Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. Hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are recovering from whatever festivities or maybe not so good festivities from yesterday and last night. But welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. We're going to be talking about the Richard Allen case. Everything's done. All they got to do is closing arguments. And then there'll be a verdict soon after that. And so we'll know which way this will go here pretty soon. And there's been a lot of reports going out there about somebody manipulated the phone and a bunch of other things. And we're going to go into those things today to figure out, was there something there that could bring up reasonable doubt? And if so, what, can we answer these questions with logic and reasoning, or is there something to be concerned about when it comes to the case? Please hit that like and subscribe button and give us a ring that notification bell and you know what to do, just like every other podcast. I got a question that came in real quick. Sandy's asking, how is Blue? Blue's he's doing well. So for those that don't know, Big Blue's doing like quite a few things right now. He is he's working on, I guess he wants to become like a paramedic. So he's going through some clinicals with that, some ride-alongs or whatnot. He's also going through some other things with school and maintaining his job at the same time. So he's just quite busy. We're trying to get him back on, but it's probably going to be another couple months before all this stuff starts to slow down for him and he makes his return. But he'll be back. Good old Big Blue. All righty. So now with all that out of the way, let's get into it. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the headphone jack manipulation, right? And so it was presented to me that this might be a situation that somebody apparently manipulated the phone. They, did something so that either they plugged in a headphones or an auxiliary cord at a certain time. And, a couple of things stuck out to me about it. And I think it stuck out to the jury as well, because they had quite a few questions for both the defense's expert that go along with what we'll be talking about. So Stacey Eldridge is a former FBI forensic examiner with a degree in computer information management. She worked for the FBI for 10 years and was part of the computer analysis response team. Eldridge is also a certified mobile device examiner and a licensed private detective in Nebraska. So this is the defense's witness. The defense called Eldridge to the stand on Tuesday after asking her to analyze the data state pulled from Libby German's cell phone. The state police experts, Brian Bunner and Chris Cecil, previously presented this data to jurors, laying out a timeline for the phone's movement along the showing video and audio extracted from the phone. Okay. Eldridge's testimony agreed with several aspects of the state police findings, though she criticized them for not doing a better job of extracting the data from Libby's phone, which could not have led to better findings, I apologize. So what she was talking about was there was like a program on Libby's phone. It was like a health program that documented steps and things of that nature. And she basically stated that she agreed that the bodies were there the entire time. It does not appear that they were moved. And that you can tell because there was no steps that were being taken anymore. Even if, because I know a lot of people were trying to claim that they were taken from the scene. And so even if they were taken from the scene, somebody would have had to have, at the very least, carried them. Those steps from the person or the persons carrying them would have created a step count on the phone, during that time, and it just does not exist. The phone didn't move. It stayed in the position of where it was at throughout the entire time. All righty. So a key piece of evidence, missing evidence, included a power log. Power logs reveal when a phone was last turned off or on. The data collected from Libby's phone did not include a power log. However, so experts cannot say for sure when Libby's phone was turned off. Eldridge stated that every time a phone is turned off and on, it loses some data files. While Eldridge stated that she generally agrees with the timeline laid out by Cecil's pinging data of Libby's phone, she did disagree with some of his findings, including when the phone last connected to service and last received messages. Eldridge said her analysis on the findings led her to conclude that the phones last connected to a cell phone tower between 5:44 p.m. on February 14, 2014, and that this, I think that meant 2017, and that this is little over 3 hours after Libby's phone it quit moving. Phone then connected again in the early morning hours at 4:33 a.m. This is when police said that Libby's phone received several messages sent 12 hours more before, including from frantic families. Eldridge said that the data shows that after 5:44, the phone attempted to reconnect to a tower that no data was being used by any apps between 5:44 and 4:33 a.m. The defense team asked if Eldridge could provide an explanation why the phone stopped receiving signals during that near 11-hour gap. If the phone was stationary, as the prosecution claimed, Eldridge said that she had no explanation outside of movement of the phone or that the signal being blocked. But the biggest takeaway from Eldridge's finding was that the phone was not logging data back to a lack of signal. It still logged mechanical manipulation. At 5:45 on February 13th, 2017, Eldridge said a phone call came into Libby's phone and that within milliseconds, a headphone jack was inserted into the phone. So this is part of what the defense is claiming, that somebody had the phone. Somebody somehow, while the phone was underneath on the ground, underneath the shoe, underneath the body of Abby, somebody plugged in an auxiliary cord or headphones a millisecond or milliseconds before or after the call came in without picking up the phone. Does that make some sense? I don't think so. So, what could be causing of this, right? And I know we're going to get into it a little bit more, but to me, it's just a simple answer. The phone was wet. The phone was in the dirt. It had some malfunctions, and apparently those malfunctions aren't new. iPhone 6 and 6S Plus, how to stuck in headphone mode fix water damage. And I believe it was dirt. So that's a popular video. So this isn't this is a common thing, right? So and I remember this because I used to have an iPhone back in the day, and this is one of the reasons why I got rid of it, is because I had that situation a couple of times where it had me in headphone mode, and it was freaking annoying. And so if that phone had dirt or water in it, it would have had the same effect. Now, given the fact that it came in within a millisecond or milliseconds from the time that the call recorded, I mean, what moves that fast, right? What moves that fast? Does a person see a phone, plug in headphones, and that movement, by the time they see that the phone is ringing, is that reaction time milliseconds? I don't think so. I think that's impossible. What is more likely is that the fact that the phone probably regained connection briefly, given the fact that it was probably wet. And as soon as it did and the call came in, electricity can move pretty quickly. Electricity can go within milliseconds from, all right, now we have power, to there's water or dirt in the port and you have a malfunction. A human being can't do that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, do you guys are really thinking that Ron Logan is that fast? He's waiting to just plug it in, or one of the Odinists. And so it's just like, come on now, man. Now, I know there's some, you got to be careful where you watch your information. There are some that are biased. Some say that I'm biased, but I have a clear record, especially in this case of where I thought he was Richard Allen was guilty. Then I began to question it, and I had my own questions and concerns, and then now I'm back on the train that he is guilty. So I follow the evidence. I bring it out to you as it comes in, honest and with logic. I don't just kind of throw some smoke and mirrors and say, "Hey, there had to be some sort of, persons there, in all these conspiracies." So let's just continue. Let's continue this and let's see what else this says. At 5:45 on February 17th at 2:17, Eldridge said that a phone came into Libby's phone, and within milliseconds, a headphone jack was inserted into the phone. By plugging in the cable, you would stop sound, Eldridge pointed out. So but basically what she's trying to say is that this person heard the sound, and in that 1 or 2 milliseconds, because it's not a full second, it's not a half second, it's milliseconds. And so somebody heard the music or the phone going off and reacted within that amount of time, pulled out. I'm assuming they probably just didn't have their headphones in their hands right then and there. So they must have heard it, pulled out the headphones out of their pocket, inserted it into the phone without moving it within milliseconds. Within milliseconds. And this is, the defense's stuff, right? This is what they have. Easy things that are provable, that obviously all they're trying to do is just create some simple doubt and hope that the jury isn't as intelligent or isn't intelligent to figure out that there's other means behind this. But they are, because they asked the questions. They asked her the questions, specifically how water and how dirt would interact with the phone, and if it would give it that, if it would give it that possibility of showing that there was in headphone mode. Now, she claims to be an expert in all of this, and she don't know something that a lot of people struggled with back in 2017 with the iPhone 6 or before that. This was a common issue between all of them. They all knew then, but somehow in all her expertise, that somehow slipped her mind. To me, that's throwing up some some red flags there, that they have nothing if this is what they're going off of. All right. According to Eldridge's findings, the phone jack was removed from Libby's phone nearly 5 hours later at 10:32. A former fire chief previously spoke about the frantic nighttime search that began at around 9:30, 10 p.m. and lasted until 2:30 a.m. and turned up no sign of the girls. I cannot think of any explanation that doesn't involve human interaction, she said. So she came out here and said that she does not think that that this thing here had to have been manipulated by human interaction, that there is no other logical explanation. And yet it's just, I think it's right here. I mean, I don't know what to say. So let's see. The official fix for the iPhone 6s, 6 Plus, 6 Plus, 5s, 5C, and SE that's stuck in headphone mode. Water damage is one of the most common causes, including lint build up. So like dirt. Now this has, how many views does this video have? I want to see that. I know it has 5.3 thousand likes. Here it is. 1.3 million views. 1.3 million views on how this is a problem, and yet the defense's expert can't figure it out. But hey, he's innocent, right? Let's continue this. So Eldridge was cross-examined, and now I am, and I've said it before, I'm not impressed with the law enforcement and the way they did their case. I mean, it's not impressive. They easily could have found Richard Allen a long time ago. They got tunnel vision. They followed the evidence that they thought they had, and in that process didn't see the evidence that else was coming through. And they ended up in the end getting it right, in my opinion. But there's still some issues here. So McClelland was quick to question Eldridge's expertise, pointing out that she had no cell phone extraction training between 2009 and 2024. Wait, she didn't even train on any of these newer devices. So her expertise was predated by 8 years. Doesn't sound so credible anymore to me. She also never testified about cell phone extractions until she did in July for the first time. Eldridge conceded that she didn't have a chance to review all of Cecil's data and the cell phone findings. She agreed with the timestamps on the videos and the photos, and that the lost log movement of the phone was at 2:32 p.m., but did not agree that it meant that was the last time that the phone moved. She conceded she did not know the service in the area of Deer Creek, and that it was possible the phone was just going in and out of service. How do you not know that at this point? Like, your reputation is out there, right? You're supposed to be an expert. The last phone training you had was in 2009, and we're expecting she to be well equipped and well versed in 2017 technology. And not only that, she was not aware of the service of the area in that area. Isn't that like one of the first things you guys they should go out there and do, is say, hey, how is the service out there? How would that manipulate the phone movement, phone logs, phone, everything? That's part of this. And again, I don't have much sympathy for the prosecution and and law enforcement here, because they didn't even know this. So let's see. McClelland asked if plugging in a headphone would have made the phone log a movement. Eldridge said it could not. When asked if someone picked up the phone and carried the phone through the woods, would it log a movement? She said yes. Eldridge also conceded that she found no data suggesting the phone was ever turned off. The jury has asked for several follow-up questions to Eldridge, including if she ever wrote her own timeline of Libby's phone. No, she said, adding she had limited time. The jurors asked if she could tell if Libby's phone was on silent or set to vibrate. Eldridge said she didn't know. Jurors also asked if water or moisture on the phone could register as movement, and she said she did not know. Cecil and Bunner briefly returned to the stand after Eldridge stepped down, and the defense sought to push on their lack of reporting the headphone jack data. Cecil stated that he Googled the jurors' questions about water moisture in the phone on the phone during a break, and read that the headphone jack could register as being interacted with if water and dirt is in the port. Do you normally Google search when you're conducting a research in a criminal investigation? The defense asked. Cecil said, no, not normally. You normally look at peer-reviewed articles, right? He said that's correct. Cecil asked if he had examined Libby's phone for water damage. He said he did not, but he was asked if dirt was on the phone when he found it. He said he did not know. It should be noted that the phone was found under the shoe, under Abby's body. Berner's questioning was even briefer when asked if he knew about the audio output meant. No, he said. And he asked if he did any Google searches during the break. No, he said. So that might be a little bit out of order. So let me pull up some a little video here from the what are they called? The Carroll County comment. So let me pull this up and we'll watch this real quick.
Court has adjourned for the evening in Carroll County in the state of Indiana versus Richard Allen. This afternoon, we heard from Stacey Eldridge. Stacey Eldridge is a computer analysis response team member or former member with the FBI. She worked with the FBI for 10 years. She's also a digital evidence instructor. She teaches adjunct classes on digital forensics, including cell phones and mobile devices. She said she reviewed the extractions from Liberty German's cell phone, Cellbrite reports, written reports from First Sergeant Cecil from the Indiana State Police and Lieutenant Bunner with the Indiana State Police. She said when she is doing her investigations, she likes to, quote, get under the hood, quote, to look at the operating systems. She wants to investigate the areas that a cell phone user cannot touch or control.
But she doesn't know the simple things that anybody else can search for and find answers for. That's where I think some things are fishy. That's where I find it fishy. I mean, all right. And this is to tell you, when it comes to like experts on either side, they get paid to be the expert for their side, and they're going to try to defend their side given with who's paying them, regardless of what they're saying. Oh yeah, no, I would never do this. Obviously they can't go out there and say, yeah, I'm going to go in there, and because the defense or the prosecution is paying me, so I'm going to align with them. No, they're just going to find experts that align with them and then pay them, and then they go out there and do it. Now, I'm not saying that experts will lie or any of those things, but what I will say is, like I mentioned, if the defense is using somebody that didn't have training, since 2009, that probably tells you that the experts that they had in contact that did have the training in 2017 probably were aware of this issue. And so they went out there and they found somebody that wasn't aware. And apparently, as we heard, she wasn't aware of much.
She reviewed the Knowledge Sea database and historical preservation location information. With that, she found some new information that we had not yet heard in the case. She testified that reports show that Liberty German's phone had something inserted into the headphone jack port at 5:42 p.m. on February 13th, 2017. This was a millisecond, she testified to, before the phone received a call, or after the phone received a call. She said,
so here she says it was a millisecond. So even at that, or even a couple of milliseconds or 1/110th of a second, that's pretty quick to try to silence a phone because sound is coming out. Doesn't make any sense. Regina says something is fishy to me that they put him in prison instead of county jail. I have suspicion of the staff there. I'm not sure why yet, just an impression. Well, I've explained this a couple of times, but they had to keep Richard Allen safe. So Richard Allen needed 24 hours, 7 days a week, protection against himself. Right. And that's what is called, suicide watch. And so if the county jail can't prevent that, right? If the county jail doesn't have the staff that can do that, if they don't have the funds to hire staff so that they can do that, it's not like, these are all taxpayer, like the county and stuff like that, taxpayer stuff. In order to get extra funds, there's a process. They'd have to go out and they'd have to vote on it and get some other things that would happen, make a bid. And then, I'm not sure how everywhere else works, but in most places, there has to be a meeting and an approval and an agenda, and all these things happen. These are all processes that go through something like that. And so if you can't house him for his own safety and have somebody there 24/7 watching him to ensure that he doesn't hurt himself, what are you going to do? You're going to go put him where you can. Now, the state prison probably does have those abilities. They have people who are on those type of watches and that are required to have 24-hour supervision. They can accommodate those things, because I'm sure a lot of people would then be saying, man, it seems fishy that Richard Allen Epsteined himself in the jail, in the county jail, and nobody was watching him. It's kind of like when the defense argues that he doesn't get to go play basketball with the boys during rec time, yet they're also arguing that the same boys are calling him names and telling him to do things to himself and that they're going to hurt him. It's hypocritical in every sense of the way. What doesn't make sense is to expect for him to be in a county jail and for him having some sort of that allows him to not want to hurt himself when he was clearly trying to do that. And before he was, incarcerated or under arrest, I'm sorry. So, those were part of his Google searches. So, I think that it is more odd that they wouldn't have put him somewhere where they could watch him. You know, and I find the hypocritical that is questioned, because if he hurt himself and nobody was watching, everybody said, "Oh man, they took him out. They didn't want him to talk." Maybe he knew Hillary or Bill Clinton. Something would come out like that. I don't know, but I don't think that's a big ordeal. Let's continue this real quick.
The phone then registered that something had been removed from the jack at 10:32 p.m. on February 13th, 2017. Jurors asked 13 questions of Eldridge. Among those, could the cell phone registered something going in and out of the headphone jack due to moisture or water damage? Eldridge said she didn't think so, but that's not something that she could completely testify to. Later, the defense called up Cecil to testify. They asked him if he was aware of this knowledge that had been shared, and he said no. Then court went on a break.
So that last article kind of made it seem like it went straight into it, and he said that you know, as that question was being asked, he Googled it. They asked him the question, then they went on break, then he Googled the answer for it.
And while on a break, Cecil said he did a Google search. That Google search showed him some possible troubleshooting to Apple devices on when the headphone port is registering that something has been inserted when it has not. Among those things, moisture damage or dirt in the port. Prosecutor Nick McClelland then asked him if he remembered where the phone had been found. The phone had been found under a shoe, under Abby's body, in the dirt.
Under a shoe, under Abby's body, in the dirt. And that's one of the more common issues that causes the headphone jack malfunction. So to me, it's pretty obvious. I know some folks are going to disregard it and somehow think that Ron Logan is the Flash or something, and that in that moment, the moment that he briefly hears the very millisecond that he hears the ringer going on, that he's pulling out, he grabs into his pocket, pulls out these headphones that he just had so ready and plugged it in without moving the phone in milliseconds. I mean, I don't think so. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to, laugh at people's opinions or anything, but that one's a hard to believe one. All right, let's continue on.
We're on a break at the Carroll County.
This one is for today and what happened today.
Courthouse today at 9:07 a.m. The defense concluded their case in chief. What comes up next is a rebuttal from some of the witnesses that the state will have. We are on recess until those witnesses can be gathered. It seems that the defense resting so early was quite a surprise, possibly to the judge and to some of the jurors, as they look surprised.
So people were surprised that the defense rested. Now, why would they be surprised, right? Is it because this is all you have? Or could they be surprised that they thought there could have been more? Like, I don't know, what would have surprised everybody, including the jurors, that the defense was resting? Now, I do think and believe that maybe perhaps because Richard Allen didn't testify, maybe that's why, everybody was surprised. I don't know. That one's a good question. Let me know in the comment section and in the live chat. Why do you think people would have been surprised? Now, one of the things that a strategy that I think that is commonly used, especially in the defense world, is you got to know when to stop, right? And I think that when you think you have built the strongest case possible, where the only thing that can happen is hurt you the rest of the way, you rest. I've heard of a situation where I've seen it myself. I saw a situation where there was and this wasn't my case, it was somebody else's. This was a learning experience for young officers, one that I got to witness. And gosh, where was I going with that? Hold on. It slipped my mind. I apologize. But gosh, where was I going with that? Oh yeah, I remember now. So where the defense's team did such a great job, with dealing with the prosecution, that they rested they didn't even call up a single witness. They rested, and they ended up winning, and it was just a botched thing. A lot of things that got missing, a lot of things that I believe that the prosecution was hoping to interview. They were hoping to interview some other witnesses that were listed on the defense's witness list, but they didn't list them on their own witness list. And so they went from what I remember, they went to like a break, and then the defense witnesses left during the break. And then after the break, that is right when the defense said, all right, that's when they were supposed to start their process, and they rested right then and there. Because at the end of the day, there was absolutely nothing that they could have done that could have made their case better. The only thing that could have done by having the prosecution cross-examine their witnesses is to create holes. And so they decided not to do so. They ended up winning that case. So, sometimes that's how things work. But to me, I think that in this situation, I think that has more to do with it. And the reason why, they may be resting now, I think they want to not give time for the prosecution to go out there and then get an expert to say that, hey, the phone jack stuff was this and all the other stuff. So it's a strategical move, in my opinion. And I think this is a one made by a team that probably doesn't have much more. So let's continue this is from today's hearing.
We're going to be heading back into the courthouse, and when we adjourn for lunch, we'll give you another update. I'm Amy McCarty for the Carroll County Comment. We are on lunch break at the Carroll County Courthouse today. I'm Amy McCarty for the Carroll County Comment. We have just 40 minutes for a break before we go back in for a cross-examination of Dr. John Martin. Dr. Martin is the psychiatrist with the Indiana Department of Corrections who's employed by Centurion. He treated Richard Allen during his stay at Westville Correctional Facility. He testified that on April the 13th, Allen showed signs of, and what he would say, clear evidence of psychosis. On April the 14th, he began issuing Haldol to Allen. At that time, it was a short dose.
So when he started to begin his psychosis, or what they believe was him going into psychosis, was after he started to make confessions. His confessions were before then. Not all of them, but the ones that said that he at least committed the crime. Now, while he was, going through the psychosis events, that's when he started coming up with some random stuff. And then once he started to calm down, he came up with some things that were more aligned with the case, so to speak. But let's listen to what she has to say.
Said, and also a very low dose, only 5 milligrams of what is a maximum dose of 100 milligrams was administered. He said Allen received Haldol medication in a long form monthly at a dose of 15 milligrams every 4 weeks. The maximum dosage is 450 milligrams. This is the long-acting form, and so it is supposed to last for at least 30 days.
The Flaxen being says his lawyer said he proved he left before 2:15 never happened. No. What his lawyer said was that he was going to be able to prove that he left before 2:15, and then it was never brought up in court. He never brought it up. In fact, I was listening to Mob Crew, and they were talking about that situation specifically, how in the beginning he said he was going to be able to do that, and then never brought it back up. So, in fact, they didn't prove anything.
He said this is the equivalent of less than 2 milligrams a day and less than the amount of the short-acting medication that he was given. Allen continued to show that he was exhibiting psychotic behaviors on April the 18th of 2023. On April the 25th, he began to show improvements. He was no longer smearing feces on himself or eating it. He recognized the doctor. And on that day, he says, Allen said to him, not on that day. He said, Allen did know the date And that as the doctor would walk away, he would call him back, and he did this 3 times. On May the 2nd, he also saw Allen. He said at that time there was no evidence that he could see of psychosis in Allen's behavior. On May 8th, Allen was sleeping. He was eating most of his meals. He had met with Dr. Walla. He was coherent. He had no hallucinations. He was oriented to person, place, and situation. He was taking his meds, although he did refuse them at times, and there was no signs or symptoms of psychotic behavior. He said that he continued to meet with Allen for several weeks, and eventually on June the 20th, he met with Allen. He said at that time, Allen had been without any psychotic symptoms for approximately 7 weeks. His speech was coherent. He had no hallucinations. He was not sure if he had communicated with Allen at that time that he was discontinuing his Haldol medication. However, he did say that Richard Allen said to him, "I would like to apologize to the families of my victims."
So while he was coherent, while he was not under any symptoms of psychosis or any of these things, this is another time when he confessed. Now, obviously, he went through some things after he confessed. You know, it probably dawned on him, and he lost it. I mean, it's been proven that he was eating his own feces. He was doing a bunch of things. Mark mentioned it as well. He was threatening other people. So very violent and disturbing man. You know, somebody that you would have expected to commit a crime like this, a violent and disturbing man. So it kind of does fit the bill here. Bullish in Seattle says, "What's my work history? I talk like I was a detective for 25 years and a lawyer for 15. No, I was in law enforcement, but I was never a detective or anything like that. I was only in law enforcement for a little while I was younger, and then went on to start my own business and stuff like that. So I don't do anything in law enforcement for quite a while. So I was in law enforcement, then I got out and I started to work for a couple of lawyers to do some accident scene reconstruction stuff, and did that for a couple of years, and then opened my business. So quite a few different things, but nope, never was a lawyer, never was an attorney or any of those things, or a detective. Wanted to be at one point, but you don't get paid there, man. I'll be honest with you. So let's keep going with this.
He said the purpose of Haldol is an antipsychotic. He said when people are in a state of psychosis, they lose all sense of reality or lose contact with reality. And the purpose of the medication is to get them back to reality.
So during the times where, especially what she just said right now, that during a psychosis, you seem out of reality. So during the times where he was making confessions, it seemed like it was in order. He knew what he was talking about. It wasn't like out of the order, like random stuff. Now, the times where he talked maybe perhaps about his daughter or grandkids or those things, you know, I think that there's more to those questions and statements. And the reason being is because there's been times where more of those statements have come out, and where he said, you know, it's over. My life is over. It doesn't matter. You've talked to everybody. They're going to think I did it. And then they only come out with, you know, it's okay. It's already over. Well, that's been done on both sides. You know what I mean? And then so when he said like he killed his family and his grandkids and all these other things, I think what he was referring to in those moments wasn't so much like physically did it, but that this is going to haunt them for generations. And I think he's right there. You know, I mean, obviously it will for a certain extent, to a certain extent. I mean, you know, BTK, you know, his family and his daughter's still out there, and people talk about her and stuff like that, but she's prevalent in the media. She's out there. She's trying to put herself out there to solve cases and to help actually solve more cases that her father may have committed. You know, she's doing some good things. Not saying that, you know, doing bad things wouldn't put you out there either. I think it would. But in her situation, she's doing some good stuff. And that's the reason why she's still out there. I'm not necessarily certain if she would have been as well known if she wasn't so proactive. And so I don't know about that, but I can see where somebody thinking that this is one of the biggest cases in in U.S. history. It went viral. It's been viral. A lot of people watch this information here, and we think that, and then, you know, to the extent where maybe he did think that this was something that was going to follow not just him, but his family and his kids and their kids. So Just kind of depends on how much of that other statement comes through.
He said that Allen's medication of Prozac would have no role in him entering into a state of psychosis, and nor would refusing his medication of Prozac. That is for symptoms of depression and anxiety. And that Allen had been on that medication prior to coming to the Indiana Department of Corrections. Court adjourned early today at approximately 2:15 p.m. All testimony was done, all rebuttal done. All that is left now is for closing arguments, which will take place tomorrow, and then jury deliberations in the state of Indiana versus Richard Allen. I'm Amy McCarty for the Carroll County Comet. This afternoon, we had cross-examination from Bradley Rosie of Dr. John Martin. Martin is the Indiana Department of Corrections psychiatrist that treated Richard Allen at Westville Correctional Facility. Martin said that on cross-examination, the longest period that he actually saw Allen was for approximately 30 minutes. Other times he would see him at the door of his cell. Rosie asked him about the difference between a one-man cell and solitary confinement. Martin said that a one-man cell is where someone would be held individually. Solitary confinement is often where prisoners go when they're being punished. It's to keep them out of the general population, to keep them away from other inmates. He said that Richard Allen hadn't done anything at that time to warrant him being placed in what he would consider solitary confinement, except he believed it was because he was a safe keeper, and the intent was to keep him safe, to keep him alive. As the testimony went on this afternoon, Brad Rosie showed a video from June 20th. If you watched our earlier video this afternoon, June 20th is the day that Martin testified Allen told him that he wanted to apologize to the families of his victims. He said at that time, Allen was not experiencing psychosis. In his notes, which we reviewed after the hearing, which were part of evidence, it was stated that on that day, Allen had been 7 weeks without any signs of psychosis, and that all Haldol was discontinued at that time. The long-term Haldol, it was actually 50 milligrams, not 15. As we had said earlier, that has been clarified. It was 50 milligrams of Haldol he was receiving in an injection every 4 weeks. That Haldol was discontinued because he had gone a long period of time without psychosis. The additional Haldol that he was receiving, a smaller dose of oral Haldol, was discontinued because Allen was continually refusing to take that medicine, the note said. Rosie then showed a video from June 20th of Allen. It was what we called movement video throughout the facility. The TV monitor was displayed to the entire courtroom so everyone could see. This is the same video that they showed on Saturday. That video showed Allen in a medical transport chair strapped in 3 different locations, being transported in for what we believe was to have his vitals taken, a basic medical examination.
So he was in a restraint, and unfortunately, when you have somebody that is going to or is likely to hurt himself, they are typically restrained everywhere they go. If you have somebody that is in solitary confinement, they are restrained everywhere they go. If you have a person who has a history of throwing their feces, urine, spitting, things like that, they will get a spit bag over their face. And I'm not necessarily certain because I haven't seen these videos or pictures if he had one over his face, but those are things that are common and normal when you have persons that you're dealing with that have these, that are doing some of the things that we're hearing that Richard Allen is doing. You have to protect the other people. You have to protect the medical staff as well. And given what he's charged with and given what he's recently been doing, I think it's a fair thing to protect those men and women of the medical staff from Richard Allen. Now, in this video, it don't sound like he was acting crazy. Let's continue.
Allen appeared in the video to just stare off into the distance. He didn't really respond to officers or to the doctor, with the exception of at one point he did lift his hand so that the doctor could look at his hand. The doctor took his blood pressure. He examined his back and underneath his belly on his skin and listened with a stethoscope. Allen just stared off and didn't say anything during that video.
You know how common that is? When you have somebody that you're in law enforcement and you're trying to talk to and they're not cooperating, or even in prison where you're transporting, they make life miserable. They're not going to do anything. It's pretty common. It's not something that is uncommon. You know, they're describing him just staring off in the distance, but is he doing anything that would anybody believe is psychosis? Maybe because of the fact that he doesn't look like he was looking at like when he was under psychosis, when he was actually having symptoms. And it seems odd going from one extreme to the other, but that's what typically happens when you go from one extreme to another. It, that, and if you know both sides or if you've seen both extremes, it's going to look like one's worse than the other. And in both situations, the times where he's acting crazy compared to the times where he's just sitting there is going to seem way worse, and vice versa. So I don't think it's anything off. I mean, he was on some medications. It didn't sound like the medications that he was on was very strong. It sounds like the medications that he was on were well below the maximum dosage, like even below half of the dosage, somewhere around there. And so it don't seem like those were the cases in this situation.
Of him. Now, when Allen in the courtroom, when Richard Allen actually viewed the video this time, he did not see it on Saturday. He at first cranked his neck so that he could see, and then he turned away, covering his eyes with his hand. At one point, it appeared he might be crying. Then he continued to look at his family on the front row, his wife, Kathy, his mother, Janice, his stepfather, and his sister. He became teary-eyed as his wife and mother both cried at viewing the video. Rosie asked Martin if, after watching that video, he could still say that Allen was not in a state of psychosis on June 20th. And there's some mixed reviews on what he said, according to the Media Coalition. Some heard him say yes, some heard him say no. And so we're going to try to seek some clarification on that. But he did say that he stands by when Stacey Diener talked to him later, he said he stood by what he said, and that was that when he spoke to Richard Allen early in the morning on June 20th, the video was from 12 in the afternoon. When he spoke to Richard Allen early in the morning of that day, Richard Allen was not in a state of psychosis, and that he believed that Allen knew what he was saying.
All right. So let's see. They haven't tortured him for a long time. The man is terrified. He's scared he's going to be tormented more. I think he even made some other moves in the county jail that he was in after the fact too. He's also done some things that were kind of crazy. I think one of the things was trying to threaten the corrections officers that they wanted to show on film that this is who he is, regardless of where he's at. And the other thing is too, like at a certain point, he's responsible for the things that are happening to him. His actions about him, what he's doing has caused him to be on this watch that has him there 24/7. His actions in the cell is what had him strapped down for medical appointments and things of that nature. So he has a lot of responsibility as to why he's being transported or even strapped down the way he is because it's for his protection and protection of others. Right. He has a right, but until, rights of this and that, everybody has rights, but those rights can only go so far until they are infringed on others. Once your right begins to infringe on others, and then, another person has the right to be peaceful, to be in peace. So if he's going around trying to spit at people, especially medical staff or things of that nature, who aren't law enforcement, didn't go through any of those type of things, if he goes and attacks them, he hits them because he's not strapped on, or he swings, or he spits, or he does worse. Like that's worse than anything that is than just having him strapped down. So he does have some responsibility to why and where and how he's where he's at and how he's being treated. I'm not there, so I haven't seen the videos. I know that they hit him from the courtroom and they just showed him to the jury. About when he was going through his psychosis, him eating feces, him covering himself in feces. It didn't sound like he was being force-fed feces. It sounded like it was just him doing it on his own. They had to strap him down. I believe they had to tase him. People get tased when they act up in prison or in county jail. It doesn't matter. I mean, you act up in the street with a law enforcement officer, you're probably going to get tased there too. So I'm not sure where all this is all that comes from. So let's see. Andrew James comes in with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Andrew. Says the thing I always come back to is 5 women saw this guy, 3 girls at the Freedom Bridge, Betsy Blair, Sarah Caraval, and none said he was a short 5'4" guy. In fact, they said he was taller. So, I understand that, but witness testimony isn't very good. All right. A person could see somebody that is of a thicker build and automatically assume that they're taller or bigger. We also have to understand, distance and how far they were from the person. The kids that thought he was taller, I think there was one juvenile that thought maybe he was taller because she was taller. But the other ones, I think, were shorter or average height. So them looking at him, he would be taller and larger. And even their descriptions that were so separate from each other during that moment that they crossed in front of the bridge, one said they saw a blue jacket, one said it was a black jacket, one said he was young, one said he was old. That should tell you how unreliable witness testimony is. And the reason why it's so unreliable is because none of these individuals were prepared to remember things in that moment. It wasn't like they're like, hey, I need to remember this guy because he's going to commit a murder in a few minutes. If you're not doing that, just trying to go back and remember that would be very difficult. I mean, it was something that they were just randomly doing. This was, everyday thing for them, going to the trail and walking and hanging out with their friends and things of that nature. I guarantee you, if I were to ask you several days later, hey, tell me about this one guy that you saw while you were at the grocery store that may have passed you at one moment, and describe him perfectly or her perfectly. That would be a hard thing to ask. So I don't really put a lot of stock into witness testimony. The only thing that I put in stock there is, can it exclude, the person? And so what are things that can exclude? You'd have to have some things in common. So if all the girls said that the person that passed them was of a different race, something that, okay, you can't really confuse that, right? Even though there was confusion about his age and coming from these juveniles, it's just hard. It really is. Witness testimony is basically corroborating evidence. And so basically what that is you have some evidence that says that, for instance, Richard Allen was there at the time he said he was. So he went there back in 2017, said he got there at a specific time. There's a video of a vehicle passing the Myers building, matching a description of his vehicle, heading towards the direction where they believed he parked and where he said he parked. And so based on the time where these juveniles took a picture and they said that they saw somebody walking in, and that happens to be the same time that Richard Allen is walking in. And he describes a scenario very similar, saying that he saw the juveniles saying they saw him. I mean, that's the corroborating evidence. If all you had was them saying, yeah, we saw a man, and then if Richard Allen never said he saw the juveniles, that would be something that you could question at that point. But that's not the case in this scenario. But thank you, Andrew. I appreciate the question. One girl said was 5'7", I believe, and said that she came to his shoulder. Women don't notice short guys. Guys certainly do. It's like a thing. And maybe. Truth comes in saying, R.A. told the cops himself what he was wearing. That is true. That is true. And so, to kind of break everything down here and on what we talked about today is, I don't think much about the phone jack stuff and the manipulation. Obviously, in my opinion, I think that had to do with some sort of water or dirt component to where the phone was at throughout the entire time. And given the fact that cameras aren't or phones aren't what they were then, what they are now, the durability, the resistance to water and those type of things were much different, given the fact that they were in an area where there was already low cellular activity, and the fact that the phone probably was wet. I mean, it just sounds like it was. It sounds like the bodies were wet, and if they were under the bodies, they probably most likely means that at that point, at least at the very minimum, is when the phone was wet. And the fact that it's going in and out, and it connected to when it did turn on, and a call tried to come in, the fact that it took a millisecond for that somebody to quote unquote plug in an auxiliary cord or headphones, I think at that point, or that actually there is more evidence that the phone was there the entire time. The phone was either wet or damaged, and it was going through something. It was trying to probably dry. And as it dried up here and there, it started to perform and worked in several different things. And then at about 4:30 in the morning or whatever it was finally when it was either dry enough to work properly or whatever the case may have been. And so I don't think there's anything there. The fact that he confessed before his psychosis started to happen, then he confessed after his psychosis was there, and then he's still continuing to do things now to the staff where he's currently at as far as threatening them and things of that nature. Even though that wasn't in court, that was something that happened. And I think at the very least, I think he's found guilty. I really truly do. I think he's going to be found guilty. I think that the jury understands some of the questions based on the questions that they're asking, or they understand what is going on, or especially like what I'm trying to say, especially with the phone jack and all that other stuff. They were asking the same questions. They were engaged. They understood. And so I have very little doubt that they're going to go in there and argue the fact that this was done some sort of, somebody went in there and plugged it in because the phone was about to ring. So they decided to silence the call with super fast speed. I don't think so. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I couldn't handle as a juror. What are we missing? Where are the cell evidence? Where Weber's original interview? Right, no, and I get it. And I think that if it came down to like, is that one of the stuff that got deleted? Because there was some stuff that gets deleted. I mean, nothing in this world works perfectly. And unfortunately, sometimes things happen. That doesn't mean that they're getting away with anything or they're trying to frame somebody. I think that there would have been evidence behind that would have been something like, evidence that it disappeared right before they just started to find or look for Richard Allen, saying, we had this evidence. We knew about this. Let's erase it now. That way in the future, or erase right now, we'll erase it now. So that way he can come back and look for these interviews and stuff. I'm fairly positive you'd be able to detect that. Now, the fact that that this was an issue that happened back then is because this wasn't the only case that was affected by that. This wasn't the only situation that was affected by it. And so, like I said, sometimes some things happen, nothing works perfectly. And unfortunately, some things bad happen like this. I mean, just like car accidents and anything else in the world, like nothing's perfect. But I get it. At the end of the day, though, where's the evidence of that says differently? All right. Weber said that he drove the van in 17. Right. But the thing is, if that was missing, right? If that was missing, and this is what me and Steve from True Crime Web were talking about, was the fact that white van and that testimony went missing or got deleted. That tells you that it wasn't part of the discovery that they had when Richard Allen confessed about seeing the white van. That wasn't known information. So just because he said it, it disappeared, and it disappeared then. So, yeah, he said some things that only he should have known if he was out there committing the crime. Let's see. Karen Reed set the bar so high for a frame job and still got a hung jury. And she's actually still got another trial coming up in reference to the case. So she may not even get, I don't want to say get away, because I don't know if she did this or did not. We still don't know if she's going to be found innocent or acquitted of this, which is the same thing that could happen in the Richard Allen case. It's very much plausible, based on the information that they have, that they can still file another warrant and arrest him. And now they can go and get those peer-reviewed articles on how, phone jacks are manipulated. So they can't bring that up at that point anymore. And if they do, then they're going to look as dumb as they did once this Google search happened. So, like I said, I think that if they get a hung jury, it's going to be harder for the defense team, because now the prosecution knows the way that the defense team is going to attack. And given how soon that they rested, if that's because this is all they had and the only thing they had left was, Richard Allen to testify, well, now the prosecution knows how the defense plans to attack, and they can, make their case more robust when it comes to attacking the defense's strategy. And so I think that would actually be in the benefit of the prosecution if it is a hung jury, because I think that in the end, it will make for a stronger case. Now knowing how Richard Allen's defense team is going to handle this. Extreme Blonde wants to see a Karen Reed show. I would make a lot of people disappointed if I did that show. And I've looked at a lot of things in that case as well here recently, and we have a Discord page. So if you want to be part of that Discord page and talk and see the conversation that I've had on the Karen Reed case, become a member. You'll find it in the community post, the member link, and you can go into our Discord and see the conversations that I've had with some of the members who we peacefully disagree. There's nothing ugly about anything that goes on with us. Here at this show and this podcast, we're a little bit different than some of the places you may have seen. We don't attack anybody. We'll as long as you're respectful, we'll be respectful back, and we can argue, not necessarily argue, but we can debate about certain things and do it peacefully like an adult, and with common sense and logic on both sides. And there is some questions and some things that are going on there in that case that, I don't think they'll ever get any. I don't know if they'll ever actually arrest anybody in that case, because of the way the law enforcement was just so bad in that case. So that doesn't mean that somebody didn't do something. It just means that law enforcement was really bad. And they screwed up. They screwed the pooch. And I don't think, in my opinion, if I had to say today, I don't think they get much further than they were. All righty. Please not Gary. I think he's found guilty, but conviction, getting tossed on appeal, and then retry the case. I don't think that it'll get lost. I don't think there'll be an appeal or anything that'll stick. Now, will they try to get some appeals? Yes. But they're going to have to come up with some extra evidence that says it's somebody else or something else happened. And what evidence would they have that's going to come out now or in the future that didn't come out in the last few years? So I'm just not sure about that. Yes. Barbara Hall comes in saying the True Crime Web Foundation has been wonderful. 100%. They're answering the call when it comes to things. All right, let me see something. I want to see where we're at on the post I put in earlier. So let's see. Let's find out where we are, and I wonder if that's changed. I wonder if people that made their vote early on, if after going through this, if maybe perhaps that's changed their mind a little bit as well. I don't know. I wonder. Because, when I first heard that there was some manipulation with the phone jack and all this other stuff, my first indication was, well, is it possible there was some headphones put in there at that point? Is it possible that an animal took it at one point or another? And then I got to thinking, and I got to watching some other places, and then obviously it was brought up in court that, hey, this is a common issue. This has been a common issue. So, all righty, let's end this poll. And we are at, I believe it was 48%. So I think it was more people that had thought when we started the show, it was like 45, 40, 50 something percent innocent, 20% guilty. And it was like another like 30 something percent unsure. Now it is 47% guilty, 20%, 26% unsure, and 25% innocent with 130 votes. So that's a pretty good amount of people that voted here. And we don't know all the evidence, right? So we don't know everything that was seen. We can only go based off of the information that is being brought to us from, the mainstream media and the media that is local there that are at the scene, and some other content creators who are there that are or have people there for them that are reporting, that are in the courtroom, bringing back their perspective on the information that they can hear, might be able to hear. And then, it may not be as cut and dry as what we hear, by the sound of the jury asking a lot of questions, to me is an indication that they have obviously their concerns. So if they're asking those questions about the defense's side of things the way they were, 13 some odd questions about it, that leads me to believe that they were a little bit skeptical about the findings. All righty, guys, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Ring that notification bell if you haven't done so. That's going to be it for me tonight. On Friday night, I'll be back at around 8 o'clock Central Time. It's a Crime and Shame. We're going to talk about the closing arguments that'll be going on tomorrow in the Delphi case. And if there's a verdict that may have happened, it's quite possible by the time our show on Friday night that Richard Allen is either found guilty, acquitted, or a hung jury, which I doubt if it's a hung jury that we'll find out Friday night. So Friday night, we're going to find out, possibly if he's guilty or acquitted. If it's not Friday night, then, there's some other possibilities that can happen. But until next time, guys. Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a BK hearing tomorrow. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. Might be going live tomorrow too. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. And until next time, guys, we'll see you probably tomorrow. Peace out.